Why are all young men and all men generally grieving today? There is a grief to being a man. In this video, I want to get into what that means, what that looks like, why I think that it's behind the surface of a lot of things. So what is grief? Natural, non-linear process we go through in response to loss, perceived loss, even predicted loss. It's part of life. You know, this is one thing you realize in middle age, that you are just constantly losing things. This is true for Buddhism, if you will. And it's not to say that everything's bad in life, you know. Well, that's pretty good in middle age, and you know, it's nice to have experience and some material things. But there's a huge grief to being a man that I think is tremendously underestimated by people. What's the first grief? First element of this. What the hell does it even mean to be a man? That isn't given to us now. It isn't presented. It isn't made obvious. Those in society who are presenting visions of manhood, it usually is sort of two sides, right? One is it's all toxic, it's all bad, masculinity's bad. That's implicit in a lot of Hollywood and advertising, for example. Be more like a woman is the other. So it's either bad or, you know, being man actually means being in touch with one's feelings. So it's like, okay, really? So I think there's a grief to being in a situation where it's not clearly defined. And what we're offered is, don't be a man, it's bad. Be more like a woman. Or this kind of internet counterposition of hyper masculinity, ridiculous masculinity, the appearance of masculinity. I think there's a grieving process going on, because when we see someone, you know, with the muscles and the Lamborghini and with the bling, you know, part of us knows that's not real. We know that's bullshit. We know that's nonsense. And because of that, there is a grief process. Sometimes you see these memes, you know, we can make fun of it, like born too late for the Roman Empire, born too early to conquer space, or something like that. There is a sense of we have lost something from the past. A clear vision of masculinity, a clear vision of what it is to be a man, the allowable virility, also opportunities for courage. What does that look like today? What does that look like today? To have courage, to say something on the internet that might get you cancelled. Ooh. I think of my granddad who was in a battle of the Atlantic, another granddad who was on D-Day flying a bomber. You know, that generation definitely had a physical opportunity for courage. It's interesting, actually, when I went out to Ukraine to do some work there, started a trauma-based charity there, and I saw a lot of young guys going out. I was there in sort of like week 3 of the full-scale invasion. There was on the plane in the airport, I met like British guys, and you could see they were excited. They were looking for that adventure, and maybe they found it, maybe they didn't. That's another topic. People have different opinions on that. But it's clear. Do you remember that during the beginning of COVID? There was like, oh, is this going to be an adventure? Is it, you know, is it fighting off the zombies? You know, I remember going out to try and find some paracetamol, and it was like, oh, I got to stock up. We've got to be careful. Of course, it turned out to be something quite different, didn't it? It turned out to be another example of the modern world killing adventure, the cult of safety we have in the modern world. It's incompatible with masculinity, the cult of safety, the idea of we need to make everyone as safe as possible all the time, no matter what. But we will sacrifice freedom, we'll sacrifice adventure, we'll sacrifice human rights, whatever, dignity for the sake of surviving longer, safety. That's what that was all about. Turned out to be the opposite. So there's a grief of like, where's my Viking longship? You know, where's my World War II battle? Where's my Roman frontier to conquer? Rhine to cross? You see this with like Bap, if people know him, you know, Bronze Age pervert, and his sort of slightly LARPing, slightly comedic, we should become like this again, you know? We should become like Alcibiades, is it? And yeah, maybe there's some modern equivalents of that, but I think realistically we know that making an app or starting a YouTube channel, you know, that's not quite the same. It's not quite the same as Greek colonists fighting in the Persian Wars or whatever it is. We know it's not the same. So there's a grief in that. We don't have that opportunity. And you might say, what are you complaining about? You know, stop complaining. It's what are you talking about? Grief. Hey, I'm not saying there's not good things to modern life, right? Let's right size this. There's a lot of things in modern life that are fantastic. The comfort, the technology that you're using now, ease of travel, you know, my generation particularly, easy jet around Europe, lots of girls, you know, other videos on that. And those things though, hedonism, materialism, they don't satisfy the human soul, let alone the male soul. They don't speak to our heart, they don't make our heart sing. So what we're left with is comfortable and it's great, you know, all this stuff we're doing now, going on YouTube, looking at all the different videos. But there's a grief that we understand that we've lost something, yeah? There's elements to this, the adventure, the opportunities for courage. What are opportunities for courage? Opportunities for strength, and it becomes the impersonation of manhood. I remember when I was young, people started wearing sort of lumberjack shirts, you know, and it was like, you're not a lumberjack. Now you see the same thing, often coming from gay fashion, incidentally. The muscle culture, martial arts. These are good things. You know, I've done martial arts. I recommend do jiu-jitsu, whatever. I recommend it, but it just seems a bit silly in this day and age, doesn't it? And there's a huge grief in that. It's a grief to being demonized, a grief to being lost, a grief to not knowing which way to turn, a grief to all those things. I think we need to acknowledge that. You know, part of the exhaustion we're feeling today is just grief. I've been through grief from the loss of a marriage, this friends, the loss of loved ones, you know. And it makes you exhausted. It gives you mental health problems. A lot of things that look like mental health problems are just grief. A lot of things that people might have, like fatigue stuff, it's just grief. You know, I'm going through the grief of a divorce, and it's like, sometimes you're just exhausted trying to get out of bed. That's natural. The other thing about grief is it's non-linear. It's really unpredictable. So if you're a man, you've got your ups and your downs, and it's all a bit chaotic. That's part of grieving. It's part of the grieving process, is that it's very organic, human, non-linear. Yeah. So I think we can, we don't have to go full doomer on this, right? We don't have to just constantly be complaining or saying there's nothing we can do. There's still a lot of opportunities, now. I've lived my life in a way that's had just huge opportunities my grandparents never had. Been all over the world, recording this from another country, you know? Great opportunities, but recognizing that some of what makes life meaningful for men is just gone. Some of the role of men essentially has been taken by the state, protection and provision. Men are in direct competition with the state. We live in a world that hates us. We recognize that. We live in a world that hates us. And I think for young guys in particular, they feel like their future's being robbed economically. You know, I'm on the cusp. People older than me often own a house. People younger than me, they've got no chance. So they feel like they've been robbed economically, even chemically. All the pollutants in the system means their masculinity is effectively being attacked on a daily basis. So culturally, economically, biologically, there's a loss there of the ease of being a man, let's say. It's funny, because we want it to be harder, so it can be easier. It's physically easier, but that's morally, mentally, psychologically harder. Does that make sense? So we're all grieving. I think to recognize that is important, because it acts out in funny ways. It comes out as anger, it comes out as rage against the wrong people sometimes. You know, something's been taken from me. And if you're in Western Europe, you know, your country is being taken from you. That is absolutely clear. It's not just a sort of vague idea of masculinity. Of course, a country without that masculine boundary setting, it's one of the key features of masculinity, is wide open to whoever would want to take it over. So that's part of what's going on here. There's a grief in that, like I've lost my land. I'm not allowed to talk about being part of a group. I'm not allowed to talk about being part of a tribe. That could literally be illegal in the UK. There's a grief in that, right? I'm a man who's part of a group, and that's been taken from me. Even the ability to talk about that has been taken from me. Economic side, all these things. It's all part of what grief looks like. It's part of what it is to be a man today. I don't think this has to be doomer. It doesn't have to be the end of the world, but I think we need to acknowledge it, or it plays out in some not great ways.